Hey everyone, and welcome to another deep dive. You guys gave us a pretty awesome combo for this one. The original teaser trailer for How to Train Your Dragon, and the press release about the new live-action remake. I'm excited to dive in.
Yeah, should be fun to see what's changed and what's stayed the same over the years.
Exactly. So to kick things off, let's rewind back to that first teaser trailer. Anyone remember that opening line?
Oh yeah, I do. Let's hear it.
Audio plays. This is Burke. It's 12 days north of hopeless and a few degrees south of freezing to death. It's located solidly on the meridian of misery, my village.
I love that line. It's funny, right? But it also doesn't really paint Burke as like a tropical paradise. What do you think?
It's fantastic. It instantly sets the tone. You get this dry Viking humor, but also a glimpse into how hard their life really is, like living on Burke. It's a constant battle against the elements.
Maybe even against hope itself.
Right, which makes you wonder how they even find the strength to keep going. Maybe that resilience is just part of their culture. You can definitely see it in the visuals too, all those sweeping shots of Burke and how dramatic the landscape is, and the Vikings themselves.
And then there are the dragons.
Oh yeah, those dragons are intense, they're fierce, almost mythical. It's a world where danger and beauty are kind of all mixed up.
And you realize how much courage it takes for them to even step outside.
But the press release focuses on one Viking in particular, Hiccup. Remember how they describe him? The inventive yet overlooked son of Chief Stoic of Ast. He doesn't exactly scream Viking warrior, does he?
No, not at all. He's like the opposite of what you'd expect. Instead of just brute strength, Hiccup has a sharp mind. He's inventive, but he lives in a place where strength is everything, so he's always trying to prove himself. What's interesting is that the press release mentions inventive twice. It's clearly a big part of who he is.
Especially since he's going against centuries of tradition when he befriends Toothless the Night Fury Dragon. I mean, the trailer makes dragons out to be the ultimate enemy. So how does Hiccup go from fearing dragons to befriending one?
That's where I think the theme of challenging assumptions comes in. Both the trailer and press release hint at this idea that what we see isn't always the whole story. We think dragons are monsters, but what if there's more to them? What if Hiccup discovers a hidden side to them that changes everything?
And I think Toothless's design plays a big role in that, at least from what we see in the trailer. He's not just some generic fire-breathing beast. He has these big, expressive eyes, almost a sense of intelligence. You don't look at him and think, monster.
Exactly. Even in the animated version, you get the sense that he's different. There's something special about him, and I think that'll be even more apparent in live action.
Which brings us to one of the biggest challenges of this adaptation. How do you translate that animation magic into a live-action experience, especially with a character like Toothless?
It's a huge undertaking, but I think it's a challenge they're excited to tackle. And with all the advances in visual effects, who knows what they'll achieve?
I mean, the possibilities are mind-blowing. Look at what they did with Avatar and The Jungle Book. But it's not just about the tech. It's about keeping the soul of the story, the emotional heart that makes it so resonant.
And that brings us to another layer of this deep dive, the casting. The press release mentions Gerard Butler is back as Stoic. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's genius. It's a nod to the original film, and it shows how much his performance resonated with people. He just embodies that gruff but loving Viking chief, and I'm really curious to see how he brings that energy to live action.
Agreed. And having a familiar face like Butler helps bridge the gap between the two versions. It gives fans that sense of continuity while still allowing for new interpretations of the other characters. Like the press release mentions, Nico Parker is playing Astrid. She's a rising star known for her powerful performances. What do you think she'll bring to the role?
I'm really excited to see what she does with it. She's got this fierce energy, which is perfect for Astrid. She's a skilled warrior, but she's also compassionate and open-minded. I think Parker will bring a new dimension to the role. Maybe even show a vulnerability that we didn't see as much of in the animated version.
I think you're right, and I'm really curious to see how their dynamic plays out in live action. Their relationship is such a crucial part of the story. It's a partnership built on mutual respect and a willingness to challenge each other's perspectives.
Exactly, and that's what makes this story so captivating. It's not just about Vikings and dragons, it's about human connection, finding your tribe, challenging the status quo. But that's a whole other layer of this deep dive, and one we'll explore in part 2.
Welcome back to our deep dive into How to Train Your Dragon. Picking up where we left off, we were talking about the casting choices and how these actors will breathe new life into these characters.
And something I keep thinking about is how they're going to portray the Vikings themselves, because this story isn't just about dragons.
right? It's the Vikings, too. They're just as complex and interesting as the creatures they're afraid of.
Yeah, and the teaser trailer really highlights that, like the harshness of their world and how tough they are.
Yeah, it's a world of, like, stark beauty, those rugged landscapes and how they're constantly fighting to survive.
But even with all that, there's still this strong sense of community, a connection to their traditions.
And that makes Hiccup's story even more compelling.
Because he's the outsider who challenges all those traditions that define his people.
Remember that line from the press release? Defies centuries of tradition.
Yeah, it makes it seem like what Hiccup does has huge consequences.
Absolutely. It's not just about questioning how things are done. He's shaking up their whole society.
And that raises the stakes for sure, especially in a live-action format.
Totally. Do you imagine the scene where Hiccup tries to convince everyone that dragons aren't the enemy?
Oh, I can see it now. Stoic, all serious, with that look on his face from years of fighting dragons.
And Hiccup standing up to him, not with strength, but with, like, the strength of his beliefs.
It's like a battle of ideas for the soul of Burke.
Totally. And it's not just Stoic Hiccup has to convince.
Right, there's Astrid too. The press release describes her as fierce and ambitious.
Yeah, she embodies a different kind of Viking strength, the kind that comes from tradition and loyalty.
And at first, she doesn't trust Hiccup's ideas at all.
Of course not. She's a warrior who's been trained to see dragons as the enemy.
But the press release hints that she changes.
Yeah, it says she discovers the truth about dragons alongside Hiccup.
So she also has to challenge everything she thought she knew.
And that journey is going to be intense, both physically and emotionally.
Can you imagine her having to face everything she thought she knew about dragons head on?
It makes you wonder, will she be able to let go of that fear and accept this new reality?
You know, I think that's one of the things that makes this story so relatable.
Yeah, we've all been there. Times where we have to rethink what we believe in.
And sometimes the biggest changes come from the most unexpected discoveries.
Totally. And let's not forget about Gobber, the blacksmith who mentors Hiccup.
Oh yeah, he's like the bridge between the old ways and the new.
The voice of reason in all that chaos.
The press release calls him a loyal friend to Stoic and a trusted advisor.
But he also sees something special in Hiccup. A unique way of thinking.
He's an interesting character, for sure. He shows that it is possible to change even within tradition.
Right. He's not afraid to question things, but he still respects the past.
And I think he'll be super important in helping the Vikings find a way to coexist with dragons.
Definitely. Which brings us back to Toothless, the Night Fury, who becomes Hiccup's best friend.
Their friendship is the heart of it all.
It shows the power of understanding and empathy.
And I think live action could make that bond even stronger.
Imagine them interacting. All those little details, the way they communicate, that physical connection.
And the visual effects. Remember, the press release said it's part of the Film for IMAX program.
Oh yeah, that means we'll see those epic flights with Hiccup and Toothless on a massive scale.
But it's not all about the spectacle.
Nope, it's about that emotional connection, the trust, the loyalty, the love.
And the actors who are playing Hiccup and Astrid seem perfect for that.
They do. And the tech they're using to create Toothless has gotten so much better since the first movie.
So he'll be even more expressive.
Exactly. Those moments between them will be even more powerful and moving.
But here's the question I keep coming back to. How are they going to adapt the actual story for live action?
It's a good question. Especially with a story that's so popular in its animated form.
Will they be able to capture that same magic? The humor, the emotional stuff?
I think the filmmakers are very aware of that challenge.
And it seems like they're being really careful. The press release focuses on those core themes.
Friendship, courage, challenging what you think you know.
And how deep the characters are and their relationships.
But they're also using what live action does best.
Yeah, making it feel more real and intense.
To ground the story in a way that feels tangible.
And to make those themes connect with people today.
So while there are definitely challenges to adapting How to Train Your Dragon to live action,
I think it has the potential to be something really special.
a film that stays true to the original while making its own mark.
That's what makes all this so exciting.
We're seeing a story evolve, a world transform.
And as we head into the final part of our deep dive,
Let's think about how to Train Your Dragon has affected us personally.
and how that message of understanding and acceptance is still relevant today.
Welcome back to the final part of our deep dive. You know, we've talked a lot about the story, the characters, but I think it's time to get a little more personal.
Yeah, I mean, stories are great for entertainment, but there's so much more to them than that.
Right. It's about connecting with them, finding those moments that resonate with your own life.
And How to Train Your Dragon does such an amazing job of that. I think it's a story that really speaks to anyone who's ever felt like an outsider. Yeah, we've all been there at some point, you know, feeling like you don't quite fit in.
Exactly. And that's what makes Hiccup so relatable. He's not your typical hero. He's not the strongest or the bravest, at least not in the traditional sense. But he has this incredible empathy, and he's willing to look beyond what's on the surface. And those are the things that make him a tree leader.
It's like he's showing us that what we see as weaknesses can actually be our strengths.
And that sometimes the most unexpected path leads to the best outcome.
Did you have a moment like that when you first saw the movie? A moment where it just clicked and you knew it was something special?
Yeah, definitely. For me, it was a scene where Hiccup first meets Toothless. He's scared, obviously, but he also sees the fear in Toothless's eyes. He sees a creature that's been hurt and misunderstood, and he chooses to show compassion instead of fear. That moment says so much about who Hiccup is and what the movie is all about.
It's a good reminder that empathy can be powerful.
Definitely. And it's something we could all use a little more of.
Absolutely. And I think that's one reason the story is still so popular. It's timeless, you know? It's about understanding, accepting others, breaking down barriers.
And it reminds us that we can all be bridge builders. We can choose to see the world with curiosity and compassion, even when it's hard, even when we're faced with people who seem different or challenge our beliefs.
Exactly. Which brings us back to that theme of challenging assumptions. It's such a big part of this story. The Vikings think dragons are monsters, things to be feared and destroyed. But Hiccup questions that he sees something more in Toothless, and he risks everything to prove he's right.
It's like he's saying, what if we're wrong? What if everything we've been told isn't true?
That's a powerful question to ask in the movie and in our own lives.
It's a call to action, to really examine our own biases and be open to new ways of thinking.
And remember that growth and understanding often come from stepping outside our comfort zone, from challenging the way things are.
How to Train Your Dragon isn't just for kids. It's for anyone who's felt like they don't belong. Anyone who's dared to question things. Anyone who believes in the power of connection.
It's a story that sticks with you, and it inspires us to be better, more compassionate, more open-minded.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, we want to leave you with one last thought. What dragons are you facing in your own life?
What fears or prejudices are holding you back?
Remember what Hiccup did. Be curious, be courageous, and be open to the idea that the world and the people in it are more amazing than we realize.
And hey, maybe you'll even find your own Toothless time. A friend who challenges you, supports you, and helps you reach new heights.
Thanks for joining us. We hope this deep dive has inspired you to keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.
Until next time.